Okay, we're continuing with quotes from the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on alphabetical order. We're doing Teddy Roosevelt. He lived from 1858 to 1919. He was president of the USA from 1901 to 1909. He used to read a book a day. He was a very smart guy. He's kind of funny in the sense that he looks a little bit like Ned Flanders of The Simpsons show, like Ned Flanders on steroids. He's very macho. He did all kinds of things, like went way out west on his own. Later on, so I like the fact that he's bold and he's brave and all that kind of stuff, and he's macho, but he's a little bit crazy. But I think he did a lot of good things. He was homeschooled. He said the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work that is worth doing. I am as strong as a bull moose. Knowing what is right doesn't mean much unless you do what is right. No greater wrong can ever be done than to put a good man at the mercy of a bad one, while telling him not to defend himself or his fellows. In no way can success of evil be made surer or quicker. How often does that happen nowadays, huh? Okay, he continues. A thorough knowledge of the Bible is worth more than a college education. His father was Dutch Presbyterian. Often when you think of Presbyterian, you think of Scottish people, but his mother was a Southern Baptist. He said, a thorough knowledge of the Bible is worth more than a college education. It is necessary for the welfare of the nation that men's lives be based on the principles of the Bible. No man, educated or uneducated, can afford to be ignorant of the Bible. So yeah, basically, the old-timers, when they had their act together, they were very strong on the Bible. The Founding Fathers, guys like Teddy Roosevelt, it makes people way smarter. And you see all these like original sort of genius-level scholars, you're going to see they were very meticulous about studying the Bible. It makes a person smart because you can study the Bible when you're young and you can remember it, versus the nonsense they teach in schools. It all gets forgotten, and so they end up with nothing. All right, learning the Bible first when you're young can make you grow smart. For example, I just read a book about Scotland, how Scotland invented the modern world, by Arthur Herman, and he talked about how it was the emphasis on reading the Bible for the young kids in school that made them sophisticated and articulate so they could go on and become great in science and engineering and all kinds of other things. The Bible's the foundation of education. All right, so Teddy Roosevelt continues. To educate a man in mind but not in morals is to educate a menace to society. Yeah, that's what atheistic Darwinism, it basically says, it's a free-for-all, may the strong survive and the weak, too bad for them. Survival of the fittest. And it creates immorality in a big way. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt continues. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Believe you can and you are halfway there. Do something now. If not you, then who? If not here, then where? If not now, then when? Yeah, he's a very much go for it attitude. A soft, easy life is not worth living. It impairs the fiber of the brain, the heart, and the muscle. We must dare to be great, and we must realize the greatness. That greatness is the fruit of toil and sacrifice and high courage. Far better to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in a gray twilight that knows not victory or defeat. Yeah, this is very much how USA was. This is the vibe of USA that I got when I was growing up. We are USA. We are the best. Okay, we're the frickin' best. Everybody else get out of our way. That was a good way for the United States to be, because you had this attitude, we're just going to get better. And I also remember, like in rock and roll music, there was this attitude, wow, Britain had some fantastic rock and rollers for a while there with, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, all this stuff. They go, but we're the USA, we're coming back, and we're going to kick their ass, and we're going to be better than them in the late 1970s and 1980s. And we were, okay, the hair bands, okay, etc. So what I'm trying to say, though, that was a good attitude of the U.S. Some other country was good at something, like England at rock and roll in the 1960s and 70s. We say, well, we're going to become better, and we do. And that's how we were. We were like, the Russians are kicking our ass in wrestling in the 1970s, but we're going to kick their ass in the 1980s. And you just had that attitude. Of course we were going to become the best because we're the Americans. And that was a good way to be. The country was going up when it used to think that way. Now it's like, just bend over and take it up the ass and nothing really means anything. I hate the way America's become. It's just pussified, feminized, wimpified, turning into a third world crap hole. That's, it's not bad. I'm hoping America can turn itself around and save itself. But this is the attitude of old America. This leads to growth and success, not all this modern wimpy stuff. Okay, continuing with Teddy Roosevelt. He says, let's see, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Yeah, all right, Teddy. He says, there is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he's an American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have but room for one flag, the Stars and Stripes, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is the loyalty to the American people. The one absolutely certain way of bringing this nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of it continuing to be a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities. Yeah, so there's the truth. When I was a kid growing up, everyone talked about the most important thing about America is that it was a melting pot. We all come to America wherever you came from originally, and we all become Americans, and we make America the best place. That was a good attitude, okay? Whereas now it's all diversity, diversity, diversity. And what they mean by diversity is they mean no white Christian men allowed, because they think that they're the only group that needs to be controlled. They think all the other groups are too small in number or too weak or too stupid, and that they can easily be controlled. But they think the white Christian man, he's freaking trouble. He wants freedom. We need to destroy him. Once he's destroyed, all the rest of them will be easy to control. That's the mentality. If you don't know that, then you haven't studied. That's obvious. That's 2 + 2 = 4. Okay. All right. So here now is FDR. Now FDR is totally different than Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was "Go America, go." FDR was kind of like a closet communist. Okay. He, don't get me wrong. He didn't continue. Truman was part of it too, but FDR was part of it too. They sold out Eastern Europe and gave Eastern Europe to Stalin. We didn't have to give Stalin all that, okay? There were people in his administration that were like, working for Stalin and stuff. So he had a very weak, and he sort of promoted a lot of socialism stuff. So I was not impressed by him at all as a president. I think he's one of the worst presidents of all time. Okay, don't get me wrong. There's been some other really bad ones, including recently, but he was one of the worst ones of all time. He said, a repetition does not transform a lie into a truth. In reality, that is a correct statement, but also in reality, all you got to do is repeat anything, like tell people, oh, fluoride's good for your teeth, and the average person will believe it. Okay, he says, democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, then, is education. Yeah, and of course, what are they doing with education? They centralize education in the grade school and the high school, and even the colleges as well, by making all these rules if they take any loans, that they have to make their education stink. Think about grade school and high school. It's so bad it's not even funny. First of all, they teach Spanish with grammar, so everybody forgets everything. They teach history with dates instead of biographies of great men, so everybody forgets everything. They teach math in a completely abstract way with no connection to the stock market or taxes or starting a business or buying a car or any of that stuff, so the persons forget everything. So they don't learn anything, okay? It's designed to forget everything. They force them to read a book they hate so they don't learn anything. They give them random vocabulary tests so they forget everything. You ask people, and I've asked tons of people, what do you remember from grade school and high school? And what almost all of them say is driver's ed, because we keep driving. They remember typing because they have to type, and then they remember 1 or 2 teachers who were nice to them, and that's it. They don't learn any study skills. They don't learn how to be an entrepreneur. They don't learn vegan diet. They don't learn almost anything useful. It's a waste of time. It's 12 years of wasting your time. That's why people were much more educated in the 1800s than they were in the 1900s. And there'll always be some dope who says, oh, that's not true. And I'm like, no, you idiot. The average person in the 1800s could read a 1,000-page novel. The average person nowadays can barely read a Twitter message. Okay, they're stupid. They're complete ignoramuses. They don't know the Bible. They don't know the Greeks. They don't know the ancient Romans. They don't know the Italian Renaissance. If you don't know those things, then you're an ignoramus, okay? And it's a curable. Ignorance is curable. You just start reading and learning. You don't even have to read nowadays. You can watch YouTube videos. But if you don't have that basic foundation, then you're a historical ignoramus, a cultural ignoramus. And if you want to study nutrition, you have to study, it's like what McDougall said, you have to study Kempner, Pritikin and McDougall. That's the foundation of nutritional knowledge. Then you start adding to it. Add to that Campbell. Add to that Esselstyn. Add to that Burkitt. Add to that Swank. Add to that Sloop, etc., etc. Okay? But that's the foundation of getting an education. There's a lot of other good people to study too. Study Dr. Day, myself, and a whole bunch of other ones. Okay? There's a bunch of other good ones too. But I'm just saying is you have to build up, and if you don't have the basics, it's like how can you go anywhere? All right, now let's see, what does he say next? He says, freedom of conscience, of education, of speech, of assembly are among the very fundamentals of democracy. He keeps saying democracy because he's in the Democratic Party. It really should be America's a republic. And all of these things would be nullified if freedom of the press should ever be successfully challenged. Yeah, that's why all this stuff about that, the internet needs to be censored for misinformation. That's all BS. That's an attempt to get rid of free speech. Let people say what they want. If they're a lying scumbag, it's better to let some lying scumbags promote things like the paleo keto carnivore diet, the high-fat phony selling bogus stuff. It's better to let all that go than it is to censor speech, because then you end up with nothing. What will happen is big money will always pay its way into getting its way, and they just won't let anybody disagree with them. So, okay, now here's the best quote. He says, in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it does, you can bet it was planned that way. And so the way I see that is there are billionaire corporations, there are billionaire people, and they control events. They can put so much money behind something that they want to happen that they can make it happen. They can buy an election. They can buy all kinds of things. So that's why, the average stupid pro is always like, well, I guess that's the way it goes. That's why, the average pro is hopeless. They're so ignorant, you can't teach them anything. It's like, talking to the dog. It's like, I put a book in front of my dog. Come on, doggy, read the book. That's like the average pro for trying to understand anything significant. They have this mentality that the world's there to help them and everything just happens by accident, naturally, grassroots. No. Things happen because very rich people pay to make them happen. That's how most big things happen. Okay? And the only thing that could change that, if more and more of the pros were all educated and speaking up about, we want to keep Christianity, we want to keep freedom, we want to keep free speech. That's the only thing that'll make it happen. And I don't know if it's going to happen or not. In the movies, the good guy wins. In real life, a lot of times the good guy loses. So hopefully we'll keep free speech. We've kind of got it. Anyways, we'll see. Hopefully things will improve.